as we speak.
Looks like an episode of Bluey to him.
Yeah.
We love Bluey. Bluey's very popular in our household.
It's
And we are
amazing.
live. We are live.
Thank you. Welcome to the episode of Bluey for February 22nd, which will coincide with the meeting of the Marine Resources Committee today. I'm Dave Marymount, Senator for Senate District 12. And that's Knox County, except for the town of Washington. And with redistricting, Isla Ho will now be part of a different district as well. So we have a short agenda, maybe. We have just a few items. We're going to talk about 1844 for a minute, then LD 1908, LD 1916. Like to wrap those up. We'll have some language review. Might have some other discussion depending on what people need. We'll start with other introductions, and we have Linda LaCroix, who's our wonderful clerk, keeps us organized over there. Lynn Caswell's here too. You're looking very official with the state logo there. Thank you. And thanks for all of your work. And my wonderful co-chair, Representative Joyce McCrate. Go ahead and introduce yourself, and then I'll call on people around the horseshoe. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator. I'm Jay McCrate, representing Harpswell, West Bath, and Northeast Brunswick in the House.
Thank you. And Senator Maxman.
Hi, I'm Chloe Maxman. I represent Senate District 13, which is Lincoln County, Washington, and Windsor, and I will be on video very soon.
Okay, thank you. Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Kimberly Rosen, Senate District 8. I have 16 towns from Castine through Lincoln, including the city of Brewer, and I live in Bucksport.
Thanks, Representative Bloom.
Good morning. I'm Lydia Bloom. I represent House District 3 in York.
Just for the
Representative Hepler.
waiting to establish a.
Sorry, I'm trying to organize all the paper. I have, good morning. I'm Allison Hepler, and I represent the towns of Aroustic, Georgetown, Pittsburgh, Woolwich, which is where I live, Dresden, and a small part of Richmond. The radio somewhere?
Oh. Let's see. Okay, that got quiet there. Representative Crafts. No, I don't see her. Representative Thorne.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning from Carmel, Maine. My name is Jim Thorne. I represent House District 103, which are the towns of Carmel, Herman, and a portion of Etna. And this morning we were heavy with heart as over the weekend we lost our Herman Sheriff's Deputy, Staff Sergeant Bobby Pelletier in a snowmobile accident.
Yeah. Oh, that's sad. Thank you for sharing that. I'm glad to have you today. Representative Fockingham.
Good morning. I'm Representative Fockingham from Winter Harbor. I represent House District 136.
Representative Valley. Well, you're still muted.
How's that?
Perfect.
Thank you. No, I run District 138 down in Washington County. There's 12 communities I work with, and I'm here today because I like it. Thank you, Mr. Merriman.
Thank you, Representative Valley. Representative McDonald.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Representative Genevieve McDonald. I'm in House District 134, the offshore islands of Penobscot Bay and Western Frenchman's Bay.
Thank you, Representative Hutchins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just got my speaker, so it's working. It said to hook up a different speaker, and I don't have a different speaker, so that was going to be a little problem. My name's Representative Sherm Hutchins. I represent District 131. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Stanley.
Good morning. I'm Peggy Stanley. I represent District 143, which is most of the towns in the shadow of Mount Katahdin.
Oh, great. Representative Crafts.
Good morning. I'm Lydia Crafts. I represent House District 90, which includes Bristol, Bremen, Damascotta, Newcastle, Monhegan, and Louds Islands, and parts of South Bristol and Noblesboro.
Thank you. Well, welcome, everybody. Glad you're here today. It's a good turnout for the last of our bills. We will be doing some work sessions, so I'll just get the script out of the way and then we'll go into the order. And we do have a quorum. We've been doing this for a bit. We still have mistakes once in a while, so be patient. Remember, if you're invited in, there'll be a delay. You might be invited in, but in a work session, there's no guarantee you will be. It's just whether there's a question or something comes up and you happen to be here, we'll possibly let you in. Purpose of the meeting is for the committee to receive information from staff and others. So we've actually done that. We'll be taking these off the table. We've already had our analyst do her briefing on them before we started working them. So we'll try to jump back in, but if you have any questions about where we were, we can let her bring us up to speed. We are live streaming the meeting and also just audio. It's all on the legislature.maine.gov website, and you can pick a particular committee. If you're not speaking, remember to mute your microphone. Check that your name and the way you want to be called appears. Otherwise, I use generic settings, not trying to offend. So you have a chance to make it the way you want it. Don't use the chat for anything except technical issues. So maybe I have one already. There we go. See, now that's a good use of the chat. Great. Okay. We'll just run the meeting normally, go through the chair. Meeting materials are provided electronically on the committee website. You can see where to click into them. And we have a quorum, but we will make sure we do before we vote. Introductions are done and the paperwork's out of the way. We'll open the meetings as we go. So I'd like to start in order of reconsidering 1844. We've had a request to reconsider, and it's usually a courtesy to give a member a chance. Nothing's changed. You don't have to change your vote, but sometimes good information comes when we do this. So let's start with that. Is there anyone would like to make a motion to reconsider LD 1844? I see Representative Hepler has her hand up, and then go ahead. That's a move to reconsider.
Yeah, I'll move to reconsider.
Okay. And we have a second by someone I didn't hear. Who?
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
May I request that whenever you say the LD number, that you say the title of the bill? It's just very helpful for the public and to us who have numbers running around.
Great point. And we will do that anytime now. Hold on. Okay, LD 1844 is an act to provide for special fees for certain aquaculture lease applications and to amend other provisions in the laws governing aquaculture leases. And we had a motion and a vote, so we're just trying to open it up to reconsider, and we have a motion to do that with a second. So we'll do it by a show of hands. So make sure everybody can be seen. Turn on your camera. All in favor of reconsidering LD 1844? And that is a majority of folks. You need the exact count? No, okay, we're good. You can put your hands down. Thank you very much. So LD 1844 is open for work session now. And I guess Representative McCreight would like to start.
Thank you, Senator. thank you for agreeing to reconsider. What you have received, hopefully, is an amendment to the bill. And the amendment strikes the section about a special fee, and the rest of the bill remains intact. As you remember, I think the concern was about the fee, and the rest of the bill had no opposition. So my hope is that the committee would vote to support this amendment and give it an ought to pass vote. We do have Sebastian Bell, who did testify that he was fine with the rest of the bill for the Aquaculture Association. So at the senator's pleasure, we could perhaps bring him in.
I don't see any objection. And Linda, could you do that, please? I know you're doing it already. While we're waiting for him, does anybody have a, oh yes, Representative Hutchins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Where the title of the bill is to put a fee on, if we take the fee off, isn't that the same thing as just killing the bill? Or is there enough other parts of it that make a difference? And did we get a second so we can discuss the bill, I guess is the next question.
Oh yeah, we got a second. We're into it.
Okay.
And
Yeah, good.
we'll get that. I mean, I think there is, but let's have our analyst just review that real quickly.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. There were three provisions in the bill that the department addressed. There was the special fee provision, which Representative McCright's amendment removes. The other two provisions that the department testified about, one had to do with emergency leases during allowing the department to obtain an emergency lease when there was, and I'm going to use the word disaster, but that is not the correct terminology, in the aquaculture industry, and there was a need for oversight. And then there was a provision in the bill that the department testified, which would allow the department to issue a lease for land-based aquaculture for more than a year. The department also asked that a definition of suspended culture be added to the bill. And so those three matters, the definition of suspended culture, the ability for the department to get an emergency lease under certain situations, and the third being the ability to issue a lease for longer than a year, are the three provisions that are in the Representative McCright's amendment.
Thank you. And it also, her amendment starts with amending it to strike the title and substitute the following: an act to amend provisions in the laws governing aquaculture leases. So to the extent that we are changing this, if it happens, it would clarify the title. So thanks, Representative Hutchins, for pointing that out. And she did think of that. So thanks, Representative McDonald. You had your hand up, but I guess that was part of your question. And you're back. Welcome back.
Hi, thank you, everyone. I did have a question, but instead of that question, I'd like to make a motion ought to pass as amended.
All right, we have a motion to ought to pass as amended. We have a second by Representative Hepler. And when you're ready, Linda, we'll vote. And discussion is still open if there's anything else, but I see no hands. So when you're ready to vote.
Okay. Senator Miramont,
Yes.
Representative McCright,
Yes.
Senator Maxman. I think she is away. Senator Rosen,
Yes.
Representative Alley,
Yes.
Representative Falkingham. You're muted, sir.
Yes.
Representative Bloom,
Yes.
Representative Hepler,
Yes.
Representative McDonald,
Yes.
Representative Crafts,
Yes.
Representative Hutchins,
Yes.
Representative Stanley,
Yes.
Representative Thorne.
Yay.
And I'll just check to see if Senator Maxman has returned with us. Yes, she has. And your vote, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay.
Secretary of State, by the way, will also
That
test.
is unanimous, 13 in favor of the
I'll
motion,
just
not to pass
press
as
it.
amended.
Thank you. 13 haven't voted in favor, none against. The LD 1844 passes as amended. And we'll do a language review on that in a little bit, along with the others that we'll have. If Lynn is ready, which it seems like she was. And that closes the work session on LD 1844. Representative McCray.
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for the courtesy of the reconsideration, and thank you to Sebastian Bell for being available. And I see he's moved back out. So just to thank you, that's all. Thank you.
He was very persuasive this time. Oh, few words say a lot, right? Let's keep reminding everyone of that. Not the committee, of course, but mostly me. So we'll move along to the next bill. Will be LD 1908, and Representative Bloom has
Yes.
a question.
Just thank you. I'm hearing something. If people could mute, please. It's very hard to hear.
We're just about to
I
fix
think-
that, and he fixed it himself because he's listening to two committees at once, but I'll try to be on top of that a little more. And Representative McCray. Nope, hand still up from before. Okay, we're moving on to LD 1908. The work session's not open. It's in, it was tabled, and we have been informed that we don't really need to do anything to take it off the table unless since last week that's changed. No, we are in work session for LD 1908. As long as I keep pounding that hammer, something will happen. Representative Thorne.
Yes, in response to Representative Bloom's request for a bill title, if you would, Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you both. I knew as soon as you raised your hands, like, oh, man. Okay. You have too many pages open. LD 1908, an act to limit eligibility for commercial menhaden fishing licenses by Representative McDonald of Stonington. And just as an update, Lynn, where do we stand? Real quick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this bill had to do with the Menhaden fishing license. There was a discussion among the committee about how best to achieve the goals of the department, which was to limit it. And the department was asked to provide some scenarios on different ways to limit the fishing to achieve their goals. And they submitted that, and I believe I forwarded it to you all. I think there were 5 scenarios, and the department is here to walk you through them. And I can screen share about those if that's helpful.
Okay, well, let's go to thank you for that. Let's go to Representative McDonald first, since it's her bill. And then if you're going to go over more after she talks, then we will screen share if necessary. Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Chair. So I'd like to request that DMR walk us through those bills too, and also inquire if they have a preferred alternative.
Great, thank you. And they're always here. So who wants that? Commissioner or Director Gilbert?
I do think screen sharing would be helpful too.
It's just that's the right person sharing. Director Gilbert, do you want screen sharing by Lynn or not? Or
yes, Senator Mirma, I do think that would be helpful if Lynn could share that document, and I would just walk you through the bullet points that the department prepared and then the specific scenarios.
that sounds good. Okay, and you'll just prompt Lynn to move it if it's necessary. Great. Okay, good. Thank you.
Are you all able to see the screen share?
I am.
I am. Yep.
Thank you, Lynn. So just as a reminder, these bullets kind of speak to the rationale and the logic that the department was thinking through in bringing this bill forward, and then the subsequent scenarios. So as a reminder, our primary concern is that the current level of effort in the Menhaden fishery is harvesting all of the quota that is allocated to the state of Maine very quickly. And we gave you kind of the information about the number of days it takes to harvest that quota. So in the department's opinion, participation in this fishery can't continue to increase under the current situation. And the fact that it has been is negatively impacting Maine DMR's ability to negotiate for additional quota at ASMFC. And that's a effort that's currently in progress. So you had heard during the public hearing, there were suggestions to allow people to qualify to obtain a commercial license using only the criteria of having held a license in the past. And the concern about that is that if you go back to kind of when this fishery started to occur again back in 2016, using only having held a license creates a very large number of licenses. And if you could scroll down to scenario 1, you'll see that. So it shows you that in 2016, we issued 215 licenses that authorized an individual to fish for Menhaden, 374 in 2017, 513 in 2018, 770 in 2019, 872 in 2020, and 673 in 2021. In 2021, that combines both the commercial and non-commercial Menhaden licenses. So if you go back in time and find each unique license holder, you'll see that these are quite large numbers of people who would qualify for a commercial license, going up to as many as 1,447. So again, just using a license, it doesn't really help us with the problem that we're facing, which is that there again is just too much effort in this fishery. For reference, I think in 2021, there were 268 active license holders in the commercial fishery. And that's really the neighborhood of licenses that the department is trying to stay around, again, because of we feel that really was the maximum amount of effort that could be accommodated given the existing quota. So scenario 1 is meant to just show you that the licenses themselves don't do enough to constrain eligibility for licenses. The other thing that you had heard was, any level of landings being sufficient to qualify somebody for a commercial license. And that has a very similar problem. If you scroll down just a little bit to scenario 2, Lynn. So again, not as extreme as just having held a license, but this shows people who had a license and who had any level of landings. And if you go back more than a year or 2 year back into that level of 600 or more potential people qualifying for a license, when we're trying to stay in the neighborhood of 300 or less. So that's why in the department's proposal, we had proposed a threshold of landings in addition to having had a license. And as you remember, our original proposal was for 25,000 pounds. And if you go down to scenario 3, I think it shows that. So with 25,000 pounds, you can go back to 2016 and stay below 300 license holders. If you wanted to lower the landings to something less than 25,000 pounds in order to qualify for a license, the department's perspective is that you can't really go back as many years and stay within that 300 to 350 license holder kind of level. So with 10,000 pounds to stay within 300 licenses, you can only go back to 2020. And kind of similarly, if you went to 6,000 pounds, if you scroll down just one more, to stay below 350, you can only go back to 2020. So those are the department's recommendation is that you try to pick a scenario that is close to 300 licenses and definitely less than 350, if that would be possible. The few things that we just wanted to remind you of, as you qualify larger number of licenses, that just inherently means that the department has to manage the fishery as though that's the number of people who will be active. So we need to construct seasons and landings limits as though that's the effort that will be in the fishery. So that means, again, shorter seasons, lower landing limits, the more licenses that are qualified. The other consequence that has is we can't let more people into the, the more you start with, the longer you delay letting more people into the fishery, given the current quota levels. And we just wanted to remind folks, you obviously heard a lot from folks in Eastern Maine who are concerned about what it will mean for them to limit effort in this fishery. And the department just really wants people to understand that if nothing changes, there could be negative effects on Eastern Maine regardless, because if we have more effort in this fishery catching the quota more quickly, it becomes less and less likely that those fish will make it to Eastern Maine. And the other thing that the department has kind of raised is the concern that the small scale incidental fishery, which has really provided a lot of opportunity to people historically, may not continue to exist in its current form. So that's enough, people can't count on that, I guess, as being their opportunity to access the fish, because that might not look like it does today going forward. We did want to remind folks that this proposal is only to limit access to commercial licenses. You had created the non-commercial license last session, and we sold that license in 2021. So that license does provide the opportunity for lobster catchers to use that license to catch and use their own bait. Currently under the regulation, it's 3 barrels a day, 7 days a week. So this bill doesn't preclude that from happening. And then the final thing we just wanted to raise, if the committee is willing to create a landings threshold as part of the criteria for qualifying for a license, we just wanted to let you know, since this bill has started to be discussed, the department has received many reports going back many years by folks seeking to qualify. Obviously, there's no way to validate the truthfulness of those reports. So we have been using the landings information that kind of predated the public discussion of this bill. We went back to the end of January of 2022 to do these analyses. And we would recommend that if this does move forward with a landings limit, that we specify a date by which those reports need to be received, because obviously people will just provide the reports that they need to qualify unless there is some sort of date by which we won't accept that information. So that is everything we had to kind of walk you through this problem and why we had proposed what we had proposed. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
No, thank you. Two come to mind real quickly. The ability to get 3 barrels a day, 7 days a week. Will that affect the commercial, or is that just separate? It doesn't even get counted?
That is entirely separate.
Okay.
And I think we do have Melissa Smith, who's the resource management coordinator for this fishery, available in the waiting room. I know that she had done an analysis to calculate how much fish that was, and it's very modest as compared to the commercial fishery. My recollection was that it was in the neighborhood of several 100,000 pounds.
Okay. And let's just take committee questions quickly here. There's several. So Representative McDonald, then Representative Bloom, Crafts, and Buckingham.
Thank you, Chair. So it appears to me that scenario 4 or scenario 5, going back to 2020, would meet the For scenario 4, that would be directly on DMR's goal with 303 licenses. Scenario 5 is a little more permissive with 332. I'd propose an end date for report of April 1st, 2022. And I just want to float those ideas to my fellow committee members.
Thank you, Representative McDonald. And let's see that. Okay, so everybody make note of that as something to consider. I was leaning towards that very direction. So Representative Bloom.
Thank you. And thank you for that, Representative McDonald, for that idea. I don't want to forget about it, but I want to ask another kind of question. So if I understood correctly, there are no landings limits at this point. It's just licensing limits. Is that correct? In these scenarios?
I'm not sure I understand the question, Representative Bloom. The scenarios 4 and 5 would have a landings requirement of 10,000 pounds and 6,000 pounds in order to qualify for a license. We do have limitations on landings. Like if you are fishing, we have weekly and daily landings limits that prevent you from landing beyond a certain amount, depending on the phase of the fishery.
Okay, I guess you were, all right, thank you. And my next question is just I wanted to say that the reason we're dealing with this issue is because of the increase in population of menhaden. I mean, I've been on this committee for 8 years and we really didn't have a discussion about menhaden until recently. And I think it's an indication of the movement of species. And I just, and we've talked about this in various places about that we have to be very nimble in reacting to species distribution, species changes, numbers of types of species and where they are. Do you feel like this is that is a correct assumption, that's why we're dealing with this, is because of the increase in the amount of fish, or is it because it's a decrease in herring?
Thank you, Representative Bloom. So menhaden have been kind of, I'm trying to think of what the right word would be, almost sporadic in Maine waters. There have been large populations of menhaden historically in Maine, like in the 1990s, you may recall, there used to be so many fish that there were die-offs. Then we went through a long period of time where we really didn't have any menhaden around. They showed back up in 2016, and they have showed up consistently since then in large numbers. So you are correct that you're dealing with this because for the first time in a while, we have had a lot of menhaden around, and they have provided a perfect alternative to herring as a source of lobster bait. And that has worked out very well for us up until this point. It's just that as we go forward, what can Maine secure for quota to provide that source of bait?
Thank you.
The commissioner is available. Obviously, those are conversations that are happening at ASMFC in terms of those allocations.
Yeah, so it's it's changing. I mean, and we're an AFMSC is on top of it, supposedly. But it could benefit Maine greatly as things change and menhaden move north. So anyway, thank you. I just wanted to address that, because in the future, fisheries, we have to be nimble in allowing fishermen to fish different fish and to have licensing nimbleness so people can adapt to new situations. And I was just wondering if you agreed with that.
Certainly, Representative Bloom, that we deal with a lot of changing conditions in terms of in new species showing up, and we agree that Maine needs to be nimble and kind of taking advantage of those opportunities and managing them appropriately.
Thank you.
Thanks. Representative Crafts.
Thank you. Director Gilbert, could you discuss a little bit about entry into this license class moving forward? Because if this requirement sets us at, if we went with scenario 4 or 5 and had between 300 and 350 licenses, what would be the criteria for, you know, retirement of licenses and people accessing the new licenses to make sure that we maintain that flexibility of, you know, with shifting populations? I imagine it will change in the years ahead. And I know we heard from a lot of fishermen in Down East who may not qualify under these criteria, but what would allow them entrance into this limited license entry in the future?
Thank you, Representative Crafts. So historically, how that has worked in our other fisheries is that there's some sort of ratio that gets established with regard to licenses getting retired and new licenses getting issued. So depending on what you're trying to achieve, obviously you can either keep those numbers equal for every one license out, one new license comes in, or if you're trying to continue to decrease, you can obviously say for every 2 licenses retired, you'd let 1 in. The challenge with allowing that entry is always that there is always more interest in obtaining those licenses than licenses available. So unfortunately, there are few good alternatives to just randomly selecting who gets those licenses through some sort of lottery. You could target new licenses to an underrepresented part of this or underrepresented part of the state. So you could say, we're going to make these licenses available in Washington, Hancock County to kind of balance out the geographic distribution of licenses. But I do anticipate that at such time as we feel like we can afford to let new licenses in beyond who originally qualifies, there will be much more interest in getting those licenses than when we will have licenses to give out. So it will have to be some sort of random process to select who gets them.
Mr. Chair, may I follow up?
Sure.
And so this legislation doesn't spell any of that process out. Would that be additional legislation to take up in future sessions?
That was the department's intent, that we would bring forward legislation at such time as we felt we could create an entry system. There are examples in statute where, using scallops as an example, there's an authority to design an entry system, and that could be done at this time to design entry through a rulemaking process. It's just that realistically, we didn't envision doing that in the very near term, given the current situation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Fockingham.
Thank you. I just want to point out that there's a lot of unfairness in what's being proposed here, because it's proposing to go back in time to change the rules on somebody that they didn't know were going to get changed on them. So I just want to say that I think the goal number of 300 is too arbitrary, and that number is not directly connected to landings. I want to point out that 9 boats in Virginia that work for Omega Proteins land 80% of the national quota. So obviously vessels aren't directly connected to landings. So if 9 boats can harvest 80% of the national quota, then does it really matter if we have 300 licenses or 400 licenses here? I don't believe it does, because it's a quota fishery. Also, I want to point out that it's speculative that we need to do this. The Atlantic states haven't said you must freeze licenses or you must do this or anything like that. It's only speculative that we're moving forward with this type of thing. And I think as the menhaden increase in our waters, we want to have the license holders to capitalize on that. And we should be as liberal as possible when we move forward with something like this. That's why I propose something that sort of is in the middle, where we have a level of fairness, but we also take some action that shows that we are limiting our fishery so that Atlantic States knows that we're taking it seriously. And that's why I don't think you need to go back to 2016 like it's been proposed in the bill. I think that you could go back to 2019 and for anybody that's had a license in 2019, 2020, or 2021, if you've got a license in 2 of those 3 years, I think should be the qualifier. And I think that even the landings level is fine as long as you give people that have had a license in the last 3 years the ability to land those in 2022, because there's a variety of reasons why people may have not done that. And it's not fair to punish somebody for not landing, because honestly, by holding a license and not landing fish, they were doing a service to the fishery and a service to the other people that were in the industry. They had a license, they had the ability to go catch those fish, but they decided not to. They didn't know that the license was going to be taken from them simply because they didn't land fish. They may have had a sickness in 2020. They may have may have been doing fine lobstering with $6 a pound lobsters last year and not landed any last year. But if the price decreases this year, then they had the intention of doing that. I think if you look at the department's own numbers and you look at the effort in 2020, you'll see that there were 368 people that had landings. And if you look at the department's numbers in 2021, those decreased to 351 people with the landings. So I think that it shows that there was a decrease in effort from the industry on its own without any government impact. And there's nothing to say that the next year that effort may have decreased again on its own. So I think we're putting the cart in front of the horse with this bill. I think that we can take some good action, and if we do what I'm proposing, where we do give the people that qualify that have had a license in the last 2 out of the 3 years, 2019, 2020, 2021, and then we simply give them 1 more year to get their landings, I think that should be the way that we move forward with this bill, and then take another look at it next January. And if it's too high then why can't we come back to what we're doing now? But to cut these people out right now, people that have just invested, $40,000 to $50,000 on equipment and going to pull the rug out from under them, it's simply not fair. It's not the type of thing that government should do. And I think that we can impose some regulation. We can make a good statement to the Atlantic states by doing what I'm proposing, but we still maintain a level of fairness for the people that don't meet these qualifications.
Okay, thank you, Representative. Representative McCray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 things. I was back to Representative Kraft's point, which I was curious about as well. And I was going to suggest that an option could be a report back to the committee, so we know how whatever we do, how it worked. And at that point, discuss the new license issue. How do you address that? So that's a suggestion. The other is, I wondered if we could ask Commissioner Kelleher if he's available to talk about a couple things. One is is this speculative? A concern I have is if you give additional year, we've always been worried that means effort increases dramatically. Those are my questions I have, and I wonder if you could address that, Commissioner.
Okay, hold on one sec. Representative McDonald, you want to ask your question before he speaks so he can answer something of yours too?
Nope.
Okay, we'll go to him and come back. Thanks. I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Members of the committee, Pat Kelleher, Commissioner DMR. So the problem is when you look ahead a year and try to establish regulations by allowing people to participate, what you will in a sense do is create a derby rush to ensure that they have landings to meet that need. You're going to drive the numbers up. Representative Foggingham ran this idea by me a while ago, and I just, at first conceptually, when you think about it, it's like, yeah, let's, we can have a certain number of people, but then these other people are now going to have to rush to fish to catch their quota. And I don't think that's a great situation to be in either. I think that's, I think it becomes problematic. We learned our lesson with the scallop fishery when the department many years ago brought a limited entry proposal to this body to address scallop licenses. A member of the committee advanced the idea at the very last minute to give people the ability to buy their scallop license in the next year. And what that did was drive up the number of scallop licenses. It puts us in a place right now with the scallop fishery that's very problematic as well as far as efforts concerned. And that's what we're trying to avoid here.
Did that answer everything? Okay, Representative McDonald. Thanks, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair. So I just want to clarify that Representative Falkingham is proposing that anybody in 2018, 19, or sorry, 19, 20, or 21 kept a license. So that would be 1,261 participants. I do think it's important that we have a landings threshold. I don't actually think that latent effort does a service to the industry. It does a disservice to our coastal economy because it prevents somebody else in a limited or closed entry fishery from being able to access that license. And I'm happy to continue discussing this.
Thank you. Okay, so there's some scenarios, there's some options, there's some other ideas to go with those options or in place of them. Representative Falkingham.
I just want to address real quick for a minute the whole idea of a derby type of fishery. I just believe that's really unrealistic on a massive scale, because to participate in this fishery, first of all, you're gonna need to make sizable incomes. You're gonna have to have a pretty sizable boat already too, and to participate in this fishery, you need to have two boats involved, a skiff and another boat, or two boats to be able to run that seine around and back to the main boat. And it takes at least, at a bare minimum, a $40,000 to $50,000 investment to get into this industry. You're not going to just see a massive influx of people getting into this, industry like that. It may increase some, but I think the industry needs to be, right now, we need to be as liberal as we can with this. And like I said, we can take a balanced approach where we're a little bit more liberal with the fairness, but we're still taking action and closing down the fishery. And I just really think that you need to let it play out and see who gets those landings this summer. And if the number is extremely high, as they've said, or as the fears are, then we can address it next year. But I think that I just don't think that's realistic. I don't think it's going to happen. And I think that if we move forward with a balanced approach and let people have the fairness of getting their landings this year, you're not going to see that huge influx of numbers.
Okay, Representative Krafts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a general question for anyone who might answer it. In scenario 5, I believe, where we list 6,000 pounds for landings, I'm curious how many barrels that is and approximately how long that would take to land those. I mean, when we're talking about 6,000, we're talking about a tiny, right, like a significant decrease from the 25,000. So I'm just curious what that looks like in day-to-day operations.
Who can answer that? Okay, Representative Buckingham.
Yeah, I just want to answer that real quick. Any numbers lower than that shouldn't be a factor in whether the bar is lowered, because really, if you didn't land 25,000 pounds, you pretty much didn't put effort in. There's really no significance to landing a small number like that. I don't see the significance there, because somebody that just decided not to go fishing for whatever reason shouldn't be punished just because they didn't rig their boat, spend a week rigging their boat up, loading up a net, doing all that effort just to go out there to catch a couple thousand pounds, because they never had any indication that their license was going to get taken from them. So I don't see any significance to lowering the landings limit. It's already been pointed out that I think that you hit that limit by fishing a 4-day week, 1 4-day week, or 2 4-day weeks, something like that. So I don't see lowering the 25,000 pound catch limit as having any merit.
Okay, thanks. Representative McDonald.
So can we get the department to answer that question that Representative Kraft just asked, because I don't think that was the answer she was looking for. And also, there is a significant difference in the data between 25,000 pounds and 6,000 pounds if you look at the scenarios. But to my point, the reason I raised my hand was that we had a bill in the 129th to limit access to the Menhaden fishery. This is not a new idea. We discussed it at length in the last session, knowing that the department was going to come back with a new proposal in this session.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that usually will trigger the rush when people have that fear that something's changing. And did we see a big change there? And department, can you answer Representative Kraft's question? If you don't have it, she can come back and ask again.
Sure, I can do that. By regulation, a barrel is 350 pounds, Representative Kraft. So that's basically where the three barrel limit comes from. And I do want to point out that an individual that may have the regular license now still has the ability to get what we're calling kind of the non-commercial, but it's a personal use bait license for 3 barrels.
And Commissioner, or Director, there was a bullet point about, was it doing nothing would affect our ability to get more quota if we have a chance at all? Or was it doing one of the scenarios that would negatively affect our ability to get more quota for Maine? I wasn't, without putting it back up, to clear it up, if you could answer it.
So the conversation with other state managers at the commission have been the desire to see the establishment of control within the Maine fishery, so it's not unlimited. Because when you have an unlimited fishery like that, it's a harder, it's certainly harder to enforce, but it's also harder to ensure that you've got good compliance with landings and landings data. So the ability to potentially go over your quota becomes problematic. So both myself and Megan Ware, working on this process, have heard loud and clear from other state directors that they would like to see the state of Maine get more control over what the fishery is. So that's another reason for this attempt.
Great, thank you. And that's not just a casual thing. It really matters if they're asking those questions when we go to set policy at ASMFC. It really matters. So
yeah, every other state have very, very tight controls on their fishery compared to Maine. Some states with just a handful of licenses that are allowed to catch big quantities of fish, as Representative Falkingham talked about with Omega in Virginia. And then other states that have very controlled entry, even some of the states, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, in particular, that have a lot of biomass, Menhaden biomass available to them, control the number of participants that can actually catch those fish.
Thanks. And Representative Foggiam's not the only one concerned that Omega is taking so much. I can promise you that. Representative Hutchins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The taking of the Menhaden, I think, can't be compared a lot with some of the other fisheries because the fish itself is so unvaluable. Is that a good word? It isn't a fish, per pound is worth very much. And so, and we've proven over the years that I don't know if we overfished it 30 years ago or not, but it's back now in ever increasing amounts. So it's, that's got to be kind of worked in there too, that, it's not a fishery that is worth a lot, but yet it's very helpful to a fisherman, especially who just, of course, we're not going to do 3 barrels, so that part's okay. But if somebody has rigged up to fish, like Billy Bob says, it's kind of too bad. They bought a license, they haven't used it yet, but they thought they were going to be able to. So that's got to be worked into that formula. Thanks.
Thank you. And Lynn, where did we stand on where were we when we tabled this bill? Is there a motion? Is there a vote? Is there, where are we? Nothing. We're just open. We're just continuing the work session.
That's, let me just double check. I don't see any notes that there was a motion made before it was tabled.
Yeah, I didn't either. But that always worries me when, just because I'm missing it doesn't mean it didn't happen. Representative McCray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we had asked for scenarios. That's where we stopped, and that's what we have. I wanted to comment on Representative Hutchins' comment because to me that speaks to part of what we're trying to prevent. If this is left open going forward, people are going to possibly gear up, spend a lot of money, and then we'll say, but I spent all this money, you can't take this away from me now. So it's a catch-22, I guess is what I'm saying. You're always going to have that problem. The other thing, and this is, I don't know the answer to this, that's why I'm asking. When I looked at scenario 4 and 5, my assumption was that these were attempting at some fairness with where the Menhaden hasn't been as prolific. But am I making that up? We heard testimony that people in the East had not had the chance to get up to 25,000 pounds. Does that have anything to do with coming up with, would they have been able to fish 10,000 or 6,000, or is that irrelevant?
No, I don't think it is irrelevant, Representative McCray. I think those lower numbers have been caught by individuals in the eastern part of the state. So I think it does change that number a little bit for those who are participating farther to the east. Does it change it enough? I don't think we'll know until we see how the licenses are sold. But I think to the points that were made earlier, I mean, that's why it's going to be incumbent upon us to do some work with the industry to try to figure out what that re-entry into the fishery is going to be from a fairness perspective. It's clear though, doing nothing now means that the pieces of the pie will be so small in order to hope that fish get farther east, that it's probably a worse situation. We've got the potential right now with what we've seen in the last few years to catch upwards of 3 million pounds in a day. And so, if we started this fishery in mid-June, we're going to see this fishery close very quickly, depending on how, certainly depending on how the commission might put additional restrictions on it. I mean, if they got rid of the small scale fishery in particular, and we had to have everybody fishing under a certain quota for a certain amount of time, that may drive up the catch as well. So.
Okay, Representative McDonald.
Thank you. So I'd like to make a motion to adopt scenario number 5, going back to 2020. That would cap licenses at 332, allow for 6,000 pound landings, which is the most permissive, and have a reporting stop date of April 1st, 2022.
Okay, Lynn, I'm sure you've
Second.
got that. And
I second that.
Great has seconded that. And there's still discussion. And is your hand still up? Yep. Okay, Representative Kraft.
Yeah, just to come back to the entry system, and I don't know that it's important here, but in considering the folks who currently have licenses who would not fall under the scenario 5, it seems important to recognize those folks as having primary access to entry. And while I understand from Director Gilbert that may not take place quickly, it seems important for people to understand how they would be able to gain entry into the fishery.
Okay. And you'll just note that, Director. Yeah. Don't know what we can do about it since we're not setting up a system yet either. I know what you mean. And the fact that if it's true that we're in a boom time for them and then suddenly it opens up, how it does get expanded if there's more fish. Representative Foggy.
I can't support this alternative because it's just simply too unfair. The commissioner has said that the other members of the Atlantic states have expressed to him that they would like to see Maine do something about its fishery, and closing the fishery is something. I think right now we don't have any demands in front of us. We don't have any mandates in front of us. I think we have the commissioner saying that they have expressed that they would like us to do something. And what I'm suggesting is that we do something, and that is that we can close the fishery, but we can close it in a fair way where we can limit it to people that have previously held a license, but we can allow those people this summer to get those landings. And you're not going to see, this isn't going to be a 1,200 boat fishery. You're just simply not going to see that many people make that investment in those landings. So I think the number of 300 is too low and arbitrary. But I also don't think if you let people have 2022 to make those landings, people that have held a license in the last 3 years, I don't think you're going to see it go far over 400. And the commissioner just mentioned again the piece of the pie aspect, that it is not our job to determine what is financially viable for a fisherman. If it's a quota and the commissioner has been handed a quota that he has to go by, then that needs to be divided evenly, among the fishermen, and it's up to the fishermen to decide what is financially feasible for them. It is not our job on this committee to determine that we can't keep cutting this pie smaller for the people that are in it. That's called a monopoly. So I'm just asking that we not pass this and that we move forward with a fair approach where we let people have the opportunity to get their landings in 2022.
Thank you. Representative McDonald.
Thank you. And I think Representative McCray is probably going to raise the point, but she did mention something about a report back. So I want to make sure that gets captured in this motion as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I think that took care of it for Representative McCray. Yeah. Okay. So we have a motion. And Linda, you ready for a vote?
Senator, I am. And we'll start with you.
Thank you. Yay.
Representative McCray,
Yes.
Senator Maxman,
No.
Senator Rosen,
No.
Representative Valley,
No.
Representative Falkingham,
No.
Representative Bloom,
Yes.
Representative Hepler,
Yes.
Representative McDonald,
Yay.
Representative Crafts,
Yes.
Representative Hutchins,
No.
Representative Stanley,
No.
and Representative Thorne.
Nay.
Okay, so it's 6 in favor, 7 opposed.
Okay. That's all. That's everyone. So there won't be a change waiting. So 7 haven't voted ought not to pass and 6 ought to pass. The motion fails. Do I have another motion? We'll start with Representative. Let's just hear from the commissioner. 1 sec.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to respond to my.
So I mean, I
Hold on, we got some
appreciate,
noise in the background. Okay, it's gone.
I appreciate the,
That's right.
I think there's a recognition of the concern here, but certainly doing nothing impacts Eastern Maine. You know, if we're talking about incredibly small pieces of the pie, when we start to talk about unlimited access here. So I would urge this committee to think about doing something that is meaningful for this fishery. While Representative Falkingham may not think that this issue is imminent, the fact is I and Director Ware are constantly hearing from other states on this particular issue. So it is real and it is imminent. And that's why we brought a bill forward in the last session and why we're bringing a bill forward in this session. Doing nothing is not a good solution here. And I don't think going and looking into the future is a good solution either. We've learned our lesson there. We limit fisheries all the time as a mechanism to control effort. The lobster fishery is a very good case in point. If we were going to take the approach that was mentioned earlier, then we should just open up all licenses, open up the lobster fishery as well. And we know that that's not going to be a tenable thing to do either. So there has to be a balance here. But right now, I've not heard a balance that really gets us to the point where we have the control on this fishery that it needs to have.
And Representative Falkingham.
Thank you. We did have this issue last session and we did nothing, and the effort decreased in 2020 from 368 participants to 351 participants. So our inaction led to a decrease in participation. I take what the commissioner is saying from the Atlantic states very seriously, and that is why I am proposing to make an amendment. And so right now I make a motion to pass this bill as amended to people that have held a license in 2 of the last 3 years, 2019, 2020, 2021, and that have landed 25,000 pounds or more in 2019, 2020, 2021, or 2022, and also to have a report back. And if the participation was extremely too high, then we can address that in the next session and do the rollback then. But the rollback doesn't need to be preventative right now. That's my motion.
Seconded.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion, and Commissioner, you did have your hand up, please.
Yeah, I just want to point out that we reduced the amounts of fish to be caught last year significantly, from 120,000 pounds a day to 23,000 pounds a day. So I don't think, and we had a very high price of lobster, so that also impacted participation. So I don't think it's an apple and apple comparison. And again, I think we need to learn by what happened with scallops. When you do something prospectively and allow participation in the coming year, you're not going to like the results. And I think we need to learn by the past.
Thank you. Representative McDonald.
I was just wondering if Representative Falkingham could clarify his amendment again.
Sure. And on that note, Lynn, did you need some clarification too? Do you want to ask something of him or?
I did, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I was going to ask Representative Falkingham if he wanted to add a date for the reporting data to the department as per their request on the landings.
After they have the landings data for next year, report in the next session.
I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. The department, and maybe I'm getting this wrong, but the department said they suggested a date for the people participating in the industry to provide them data that they had landed a certain number. And I believe in Representative McDonald's, there was an April 1st date, of course, of 2022, which you want to push it out.
Yeah, by January 1st of 2023.
Okay, thank you.
Representative McCray.
So did you still want me to repeat that to answer the first question, Senator?
Yes, please. Hold on. Representative McCray.
So pass as amended, license holders that have held a license in 2 of the last 3 years, 2019, 2020, 2021, and that have landed 25,000 pounds or more in 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022 or 2022. And also a report back next year on participation.
All right. And that was your question for him to clarify, Representative McDonald, right?
It is, but doesn't that equal less participants? I guess I'm a little confused on what that achieves. It sounds amendable to me, but I'm not sure how that's different. I'm struggling with the data here.
Okay. Representative McCray, go ahead. And we'll come back and try to get that.
Representative McDonald's better at math than I am, but I appreciate Representative Falkingham's suggestion. I'm very concerned though about going forward, the 2022. Would you consider what you suggested without that addition of, the 3 years you talked about landed 25,000 or more, but not including going forward?
The 2022 is just the current year. It's that, and that's the whole issue that we're dealing with here. It's the fact that these people haven't had an opportunity to get the landings. They were unaware that the state was going to pull the rug out from under them, and there was no indication that even though they've held a license, that they weren't going to be able to keep the license. So 2022 is the most significant part of that. They should have an opportunity to get their landings. And in all fairness, if they don't get it in 2022, then they can have their license pulled from them. But I think it's a matter of fairness to give them the opportunity to get the landings.
Well, I appreciate. I appreciate we're all trying to be fair and just trying to figure out what's fair. I think the commissioner's points about the high price on lobster affected how many, you mentioned a decrease in effort, but we had other factors going on. The amount was decreased. The lobster was at a record high. So, it's not apples and apples. So I'm just concerned about not doing something now.
Yeah, well, and to that point, they shouldn't be penalized for that. They shouldn't be penalized for that non-participation in the fishery. They were actually doing a service to the fishery by not participating in it, and they didn't need to move into that fishery. I mean, they very well could have moved to that fishery, but they showed you that fishermen have the restraint not to go after a fishery like that just because they're allowed to. So, that's what I would say to that.
Okay, Representative Donald, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I just realized that the 2022 piece was what I was missing. I didn't quite capture that somehow. Apparently, I don't know what year it is. But either way, I won't be able to support this amendment because I share the department's. I remember what happened with scallops, and I share the department's concern.
Yeah, that's been an ongoing mess, but Representative Hutchins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this, like I said, because of the value of the pogies, if there's only another chance for one more year to enter this, people that already have a license and already have gear and have made the expense of gearing up and yet haven't fished, they would probably be the only ones that might try more fishing. This looks like a 1 year extension to everyone else, I suspect. And so the chances of anyone else expending large sums of money to get into a fishery for 1 year is probably very remote. So I do support Billy Bob's motion. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner, go ahead.
Thanks, Senator. I was going to ask for a 5-minute break so we could actually calculate the numbers, but Melissa Smith has been in the background and I can hear her fingers furiously typing away here. And it looks as if the way the motion has been characterized by Representative Falkingham, it would be 660 licenses if you look at 2 of the last 3 years, roughly 660 licenses. So, what he's suggesting is I'll allow him to correct me if I'm wrong, is what he's suggesting is if they do not catch, are you suggesting 25,000 now, or is it a lower number?
No, 25,000 is a good number. They just need the opportunity to get it in 2025 or 2022.
Yeah. Okay. So then if they don't catch 2025, then they would lose their license and that 660 would go down. I disagree on the Derby aspect that there won't be one. I think this will create a Derby component with the number of people who potentially have already bought gear, but I would rather have a firm number up front. Certainly, that's going to happen. We also, it potentially is going to incentivize people to falsify landing reports in order to meet the 25,000, which is always a concern.
Thank you. Representative Hepler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, that was one of the questions that I had. How many license holders have met this in the last 2 or 3 years, 2 out of 3 years? How many, is there a way to estimate how many more people would qualify if they could, if they made it in this year, if that makes sense?
Maybe I don't understand. I thought that's what the commissioner was just answering. So
okay.
Someone else understands that different. 660 is approximately the number.
Okay.
Using this year's data.
Okay.
Representative Krafts.
Yeah, I guess I have a question about following through on this amendment. If we get to January 1st, 2023, and we see 660 licenses, everyone qualifies. Can someone explain where we stand in 2023 as far as fisheries management that would be different than where we're at today and options at that point?
Yes, I'm sure that someone can. We'll still have the same quota too. They can open up all these licenses and be shut down in minutes, it sounds like, the way with too many people catching. But Lynn has her hand up. You can answer that?
I'm going to provide one answer, and that is if you have a report back requirement in the bill, if you pass this out, You could have a report back from the department to the committee in the, let's say, January 15th of 2023. You could give yourself authority to report out a bill in response to that. That's just a technical. I just want to make sure you all remembered that.
And thank you. Any other part of it, Director Gilbert, anybody?
Can try to speak to that, and Representative Crafts, just let me know if I'm not answering your question correctly. What I think you might be asking is, how would the department manage if we had 660 individuals who did go ahead and qualify for licenses? And this is what we were trying to say about quota managed fisheries is we have to manage as though all those people will then continue to be active. So we would have to set a season and a daily landings limit at a level that we felt like we're not going to exceed the quota in one day. And that is, with that amount of effort, it would be, I just calculated, if those 660 people, if they each landed 25,000 pounds, that's close to 17 million pounds. So certainly that could be, that amount of people could catch the quota in one day, I guess, for lack of a clearer answer. So we would have to set a landings limit to ensure that didn't happen.
Okay. And did that answer it, Representative Krause? Good.
Yes, thank you.
Representative Buckingham?
I'm glad that the department came back with those numbers so quickly, because I think it shows that this proposal already cuts down the number of potential licenses being held dramatically. You saw some numbers that were up around 1,400. With this proposal, we're already cutting that number in half to a little over 600. And I think it's pretty reasonable to assume that all of the 600 are not going to qualify on landings. So you're looking at another significant reduction from that number. So I think when it's all said and done, I think you'll probably realistically be somewhere in the ballpark of the number that I was talking about before. And it's a quota managed fishery too. So I definitely think that's pretty workable.
Okay, so no other hands are up. We have a motion and a second. When you're ready, Linda.
Ready. Senator Miramont.
No.
Representative McCright.
No.
Senator Maxman.
Yes.
Senator Rosen.
Yes.
Representative Ali.
Yes.
Representative
Good.
Buckingham.
I can't hear.
Yay.
Can't hear.
Thank you. Representative Bloom.
No.
Representative Hepler.
No.
Representative McDonald.
No.
Representative Crafts.
No.
Representative Hutchins.
Yes.
Representative Stanley.
Yes.
And Representative Thorne.
Yay.
Okay. So that would be 7 in favor and 6 opposed.
Okay. LD 1908. It has 7 in favor of the amended motion and 6 opposed. That's the full committee. So the motion passes. That concludes the work session on LD 1908.
Minority report.
Anybody want to weigh in on that? Seems like Representative McDonald, is there, Representative Buckingham.
We need a minority report.
Sorry, were you just speaking to me? I had to step out for a minute.
Yeah, since you made the motion, I'm sorry, you won. Never mind. I see why you're not paying attention. You want to do it, Representative McCrate? I've got this backwards here, but.
Oh, thanks. I would make the motion, our original motion that Representative McDonald made ought to pass as amended with
Scenario 5.
A report back to the committee and a landing report date by 4/1/22.
I agree. Everybody who voted against the successful motion, agree with that. If not, just speak up. See no opposition to that. That'll be the minority report for all of us. Thank you. Representative McCray, your hand's still up? Or, yeah. Okay, good. All right. I'm not going to tell you what we're going to do next until I get up on the screen here. We are going to move into the work session for LD 1916, an act to create a legal defense fund for the Maine lobster industry, presented by Representative Fockingham. Lynn, if you'll just bring us up to speed where we are. Just a continuation of the work session from a tabling motion, I think, but we'll confirm that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. That is where you were. There was a motion to table. However, there was a motion made before you tabled, I believe, that Representative McDonald made a motion ought not to pass, but then the committee decided to table. And you did request that the Attorney General's office send an individual if you had further questions on the legal aspect that I shared with you. So I can tell you that there is Mark, and I have to look up his name because I didn't write it down, is here in case you have questions on that respect.
Okay, thank you. I did hear that someone was requested from the Office of the Attorney General and that Mr. Rondelak may be available for us. And if he is, would you let him in, please, Linda? Thank you. While he's coming in, Representative McDonald had a question or something to say.
Thank you, Chair. I did. So I have a number of concerns about this bill. It is the use of funds is too broad. The funds are being directed to private entities. The surcharge is coming from trap tag funds, which are used to fund co-management. They support the work of the Lobster Advisory Council and Lobster Zone Councils, which is how the lobster industry participates in this co-management structure. The Class 1 surcharge is resting on the backs of those who can least afford the surcharge and are the least impacted by the whale rules. And I am happy that somebody from the AG's office is here, and I would like to hear their legal assessment of this legislation. Thank you.
Okay, and with that, I'm glad to. Oh, there you are. Great. And if I have that right, Mr. Rondelak?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's Mark Randlett.
Thank you. I'll get that right. And did you need the question asked again, or do you have a general statement? Or
well, let me just start general, and then we can move into more specific questions if there are any. And again, good morning, committee members. My name is Mark Randlett. I'm an Assistant Attorney General. Last week, I did send an email to the committee, to the Oakland analysts, specifically Ms. Caswell, addressing some legal issues that we identified with respect to the LD. We flagged a few of them. There were a couple of potential legal concerns with respect to the scope of the potential use of the funds. As we indicated, there was, to the extent that the LD would allow the discretionary use of funds without any specific legislative finding that there was a legitimate public purpose for the use of those funds, those uses could violate the provisions of the Constitution that related to a finding by the legislature that there be a legitimate public purpose, and also to the extent that it allowed this commission that was being developed to determine whether or not there's a legitimate purpose for the use of those funds. It could result in an unlawful delegation of legislative authority. There was a third category of concern that was raised that we didn't have as much of an opportunity to review, but we have had an opportunity to look into further, which is the potential for the LD, the law, to violate the First Amendment. And having looked at that issue more in depth, we do believe that the LD does create a legitimate risk of creating a First Amendment violation. So I just want to expand on that one a little bit, and then I'll take some additional questions if there are any. With regard to the First Amendment issue, we believe that there's a possibility that a lobsterman who is being required to pay fees to the department in the form of either trap tag fees, a portion of their trap tag fees, or a surcharge on their lobster license, could challenge the law if they did not agree with the position that was being taken by the lobstermen's associations, the lobster union representing the lobstermen, or with regard to any other decisions for the use of those funds being taken by the commission, this commission that's being formed, simply because they don't agree with the message that is being supported by the use of those fees. This is a First Amendment violation, and there are at least 2 United States Supreme Court cases which have found these types of laws to be unconstitutional. And I'll just mention, there may be others, I'll mention those 2. There's Janus versus the American Federation of State. That is a 2018 United States Supreme Court case that involved an Illinois law where non-union members of a public employees association were required to pay a portion of their union fee to cover union expenditures concerning collective bargaining activities. In that case, Mr. Janus was a non-member, and he sued the association because he opposed many of the union's positions. And the court in that case held that mandatory agencies fees for non-consenting employees violated that member's free speech rights, or more generally, the free speech rights of non-members, by compelling them to subsidize private speech on behalf of other members. And that created matters of, in addition to the subsidizing private speech on matters that involve substantial public concern. The court just, in its opinion, made a very simple statement that kind of summarized its concern. And it said that in simple terms, the First Amendment does not permit the government to compel a person to pay for another party's speech just because the government thinks that the speech furthers the interest of the person who does not want to pay. So that is the Janus case. There's another case, U.S. versus United Foods. That is a 2001 United States Supreme Court case. In that case, a mushroom producer challenged an assessment imposed pursuant to a Mushroom Promotion Research and Consumer Information Act to fund advertisements for promoting mushroom sales. In that case, the U.S. Supreme Court held that the assessment requirement violated the First Amendment because the First Amendment prohibits governments from compelling individuals to pay subsidies for speech to which they object. Again, those are at least 2 cases that we found. We do think that the bill in this case does create a legitimate risk of a First Amendment violation. And I'll leave it at that. If the committee members have any additional questions for me, I'd be happy to address them.
Thank you very much. Any questions, Representative Fockingham?
Yeah, I have a question. With that opinion that you just gave and the surcharges that lobstermen already pay, that goes to the marketing collaborative, would the same thing apply to those surcharges? Are you saying that if a lobster fisherman did not agree with the message that was being delivered by the Lobster Marketing Collaborative, that they could sue the state because their First Amendment was being violated by the message from the Lobster Marketing Collaborative?
Well, we're talking about the, right now we're talking about the use of funds from surcharges that being used to pay for legal defense for members of licensed lobster license holders that don't agree with that position. And it's our position with regard to the LD in this case that does in fact create a legitimate risk of a challenge on First Amendment grounds. Now, I couldn't tell you whether or not that challenge would be legally successful. It has been successful in at least a couple of cases, and we think the risk is there. But in terms of how it might ultimately end up, we couldn't say.
Can I just have a follow-up?
Sure.
So you're saying that the same argument that would be presented for that would equally apply to the Lobster Marketing Collaborative surcharge as well then, right?
Well, I'm not addressing the market collaborative surcharge at this point. I've focused on the use of the monies for these particular purposes. I would have to go back into the statute, the authorizing statutes for that collaborative surcharge to see if there is some basis for those to be legitimately used. But under the general principles that I'm discussing here, yes, if there is a mandatory fee that is being charged to a lobster license holder, such as a surcharge on their license or a charge for license tags or portions of that fee, if there's a mandatory fee that they have to pay that funds speech that to which they disagree, then there could be a legitimate, we believe there's a legitimate concern of a First Amendment violation here. So without having specifically reviewed and addressed this particular problem with regard to that statute, that specific statute, I could say that the principles are the same. If there's a mandatory fee funding a speech that a person doesn't personally agree with, there is a risk of that challenge.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that answer.
And thank you, Representative Hutchins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that issue of fishermen being concerned with the First Amendment on that particular issue is so thin, it only has one side, and I think the fishermen would all be on one side of that. So I really wouldn't be concerned about that part of it, I don't think. Thanks.
Thank you, Representative McDonald.
I'm a fisherman, and as this is currently written, it is very broad and goes beyond whale rules. And so I do see a potential for me not to agree, depending on how those funds were allocated and what issue they were being used to fight.
Thank you. And Representative Fockingham requested that a panelist who was removed be brought back in. I'm just going to run this by the committee. I don't hear anybody asking for input from that panelist or that that person can be listening or watching, so they're getting the information. What happened, and the committee would see this as well as other panelists, is that we start the meeting with a caution to use the chat only for technical issues. I do remember saying it because I was looking at it and always thinks that's an important one. And a panelist chose to start putting in her input into a work session where it wasn't asked for. So I reminded her that it's only for technical issues. Please don't use for anything else. And then she did it again. So I removed her. That's the 3 strikes and you're out. And maybe I didn't say those exact words, so I'm saying them right now for whatever number of meetings we have left. If you don't listen and you're warned, you're out. Just to be clear. That seems clear now. Okay, now that we're done being clear, does anybody want to let that panelist back in for any reason. And because I will have her sent a new link if that's the case, but I don't see anybody looking to ask a question, and this is a work session. Representative Fockingham. You're muted. You're still muted.
Sorry, thanks, Senator. I'm going between the raise the hand, the mute, the put the hand down. Yeah, I'd like to bring her in. I wasn't aware of that, what was going on over there in the chat. I don't think she probably understood that she wasn't supposed to use it that way, but I would just like to bring her on because I want her input as a representative of the industry.
Okay, so that may take a minute. Linda will have to work on that. It says that she won't be let back in, so she probably needs a new link, and Linda can take care of that and all that. So while we're waiting for that, we do have a question from Representative McCray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wondered if we could ask Patrice McLaren. The MLA was mentioned in the public hearing as on their position on this, and I wondered, I think she's here, if she would be willing to speak about MLA's position.
And I'm glad to bring her back in. Let's see.
Voted her.
Oh, you're doing that too, Linda? Thank you. Yeah, it'd take me twice as long. That's great. Representative, well, let's come back to you. Representative Hepler had her hand up too.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I was just looking through the piles of notes and amendments that had and emails that had come through here. And is there a cost? I mean, it's not a fiscal note since the money apparently as presented comes from two different places that are currently collected. But is there how much are we talking about each year being collected?
Who can answer that? Representative Fockingham. Okay, good.
I could answer it to the best of my abilities. The number that I came up with in the first assessment was around 807,000, but I think it might be slightly higher with the increase on Class 1 licenses, and I think it would be roughly around 900,000. That's ballpark.
Okay, and that, I'm sorry, I was trying to make sure all these things were coordinated. That was just the part from licenses?
Sorry, that was the whole bill.
Okay, well, the part from DMR, the part licenses, tags. Okay, good. Great. Representative McDonald?
Thank you, Chair. So I had a question along those lines too. I presume there are administrative costs here that are either coming from surcharges or where are those coming from? I'm a little concerned when people can directly contribute to the existing legal funds that we're creating additional funds through additional expenses through having an administrative commission.
Thank you. Commissioner.
Thank you, Senator. There certainly would be a fiscal note here because there would be a cost to the agency in order to administer any kind of program like this. We would need to have outside or we need to have legal counsel associated with this work to understand what each of the potential reimbursements would mean, what kind of case they were, did they meet the objectives? And you'd need that for guidance for the commission that was established. But I do want to point out the just severe impact to the department as a whole, though. The 20 cents for each trap tag equates to about $600,000 a year. That's 7 positions we would either have to lay off from the lobster program, which would include probably 2 licensing clerks, 3 Marine Patrol officers, and two scientists, as well as an admin person within the Bureau of Marine Science. So it would have very, it's essentially got our programs and potentially cause a compliance issue with the assessment work that we need to do to maintain compliance on the fisheries management plan with the commission. And then beyond that, you know, if that wasn't the approach we took, then I would just have to turn around and raise trap tag fees. So we didn't do that. Right. So there's going to either have to be an increased cost to avoid the impact to the department or substantial layoffs within the lobster program.
Thank you. And Ms. McCarron, I'm not forgetting you. You will be up, but Representative Buckingham has probably got a question relevant to this right in the moment. So go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to rebut that a little bit about the fiscal note and the cost to the department, because the bill includes language that the commission must pay for itself. So, and it says shall, so it must pay for itself. So whatever cost, administrative cost there is that is involved with the department overseeing the commission and being a pass-through for the funds, those costs are covered in the bill itself.
Okay, we'll get back to that. Let me get these committee member questions. Representative McDonald.
So to further clarify that, instead of just contributing to a legal fund, we would also, my surcharge would be, well, I'm not a class 1, but would be expected to also pay for administrative costs. So all of the money is not actually going to legal fees. It is partially going to administration.
That's what it sounds like, unless anybody disagrees. It sounds like that is the way it is. Representative Hepler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two questions. One is directed at Representative McDonald, who was talking about the Class 1 license. Can you say a little bit more about, I think you said earlier that it had to do with people who may not be as affected by the lobster fees. So I wonder if you could say more about that. And then the second, yeah, and I'll ask this other question later. Thanks.
Sure. Happy to answer that question, and the department I'm sure could as well. Class 1 license is for a single person fishing alone on their boat. So it's typically held by the smaller scale members of our fishery who are fishing close to shore. You know, perhaps they're young, perhaps they're older, but it's for a single person fishing alone. It is standard in the industry to buy a class 2 or higher. So these are our boats that are fishing the least, contributing the least effort, and operating closest to shore, and therefore least impacted by whale rules.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yep. You said you had a second question, Representative Hepler?
Yes, thank you. So could these legal fees, and I guess this gets to the concern about it being too broad, and I'm just asking this, could there be, can you foresee a scenario, and maybe this is to Representative Buckingham, where the legal fees might go to defend something or to pursue something that the department has a different view on? Just asking.
Go ahead, anyone?
Well, first and foremost, these fees are to come from the lobster industry to support the lobster industry in its legal defense. And I don't know what future administrations will be or who future commissioners will be. And so this money is set aside for the lobster industry and a commission made up of members from the lobster industry to decide what they need to fight for their industry. So it's from the industry and it's for the industry. So I don't know what the opinion of this commissioner or a future commissioner may be. So it's really irrelevant to the fact that this is lobster industry money that comes from the industry to support the industry. And the bill does say that this money is specific to the lobster industry, so it can't be used for any type of legal fights that don't involve the lobster industry.
Thank you. Representative McCray.
Well, I have the same concern, and I don't know any group of people that agrees all the time. So that remains a concern for me, that it's pretty broad. We're talking about a specific issue now, but where will we be? again, I guess I would, well, I'll just stop there. I'd like to hear Ms. McLaren, but I think we're getting there. Thank you.
Yes, and Representative McDonald, go ahead.
I'll defer to Representative McCrate and see if she had a direct question for Director McCarron before I proceed.
Okay, it's back to you finally, Ms. McCarron.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity to speak. I guess I'd like to say, obviously, we thank Representative Fockingham for his efforts on this. The need for legal defense is real. I would say in my 22 years here at MLA, we've never had, I mean, this issue is indescribable in terms of the impact that it's going to have on our fishery. I, for one, am truly worried about whether or not we're going to have a future for our fishery. So the need is massive. It really can't be overstated. MLA has had a legal defense fund on the books since 2008. We've stepped ours up significantly over the last couple of years, and we have been successful. We are presently suing National Marine Fisheries Service. We're an intervener in another case, and we've done well. As Representative Fockingham has pointed out, you know, the future is uncertain, but I think from MLA's perspective, we're hopeful that we can work with the industry to continue this legal defense, however the money comes. In terms of the bill itself, we definitely share the goals, but I do remain concerned about using trap tag fees, using marketing collaborative fees. That is a significant loss of services. And I don't think that the industry really understands the trade-off. And if the commissioner's assessment is correct, that we're going to be losing Marine Patrol officers and scientists, that gives me great pause. I would urge the committee to look at the possibility of funding this through the surplus. LD 1898 was looking at getting money to assist the lobster industry on the whale situation. And I think in terms of everything that we face in terms of whale rules, the future of whale rules, financial mitigation is important for sure because it's real, but most important is our ability to fight these legal challenges, because the industry will get through implementation of the whale rules. We'll do it. It will be difficult, but people will make it work. Our ability to survive these legal challenges, our ability to survive a 98% risk reduction as mandated under federal statute. I mean, if we don't meet it, we're out of business. So if we don't fight the goalpost, we are out of business. I just think we have to be careful to not remove what we have in place. We have to be careful about how we pay for this. So I don't know if there's any way to go to the surplus that the state has and look at that money instead, or find a mechanism that the industry is funding this without, you know, gutting the services that our industry relies on. So I guess that's my 2 cents.
Okay. And did we ever get that other person back in that was trying to get back in for Representative Fockingham to ask a question?
Yes, Senator, she is in the attendees room.
All right. You
Virginia
bring her in,
Olsen.
please.
All right. She's on her way in.
Thank you, Ms. McCarron, for that too, by the way. That was very helpful. Welcome, Ms. Olson. I think Representative Fockingham had a question or just wanted you to weigh in for the union. I'm not sure.
Thanks, Dave. I was just wondering, Virginia, as a representative of the industry, we just had Patrice on here. I was just wondering if you could give us some of the industry's input on what they think of this bill.
The fishermen that I've spoken with, being a fisherman myself, we support Representative Fockingham's bill. it is nice to have a little bit of accountability from the fishermen, putting funds that we actually pay into the DMR towards a defense fund. Representative Fockingham had an amendment, which I'm sure I missed part of that, which was splitting the money by a third to separate the groups out and a third back to the commission. And I thought that was a good amendment. I think that goes to some of Representative McCrate's concerns. I think when we're looking at cutting services, that we do have a general fund, and some of those services should maybe be funded by the general fund and not solely at the discretion of our tags. The licensing division, does service other parts, not just lobstering, and Marine Patrol as well services other fisheries, not just lobstering. Yes, it is the lion's share that they do, but they also have shellfish responsibilities, scalloping, urchin, worming. There's plenty of other fisheries that they service. It's not just lobstering. So I think that there's other ways to be creative about it, and still the fishermen get a say in some of the fees that they're paying in, and that is a good thing for them as well. As far as the marketing collaborative, we are all now working and doing more with less. And if we don't find a way to secure our industry within the next 10 years, then we won't have an industry left to secure. We won't have something left to market. So I don't think it's a huge ask to take 20% of that fee and to try this for a few years to see how we go. There's a sunset clause here where we're going to report back. So I think it's very appropriate.
Thank you, Ms. Olson. Any questions? Yes, Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for being here today, Ms. Olson. So the Lobster Union is part of the Machinists Union, correct? And that is the largest union in the United States?
Correct.
And you do have a legal defense fund as well that fishermen contribute to directly?
Yes, we do. Sustainable Maine Fishing Foundation was started earlier this year.
Thank you. And I hope you're successful with that as the MLA as well. And can you share with us some of the other issues that the union has fought on behalf of the lobster industry over the past, 6 or 7 years?
So we are also interveners in the DC lawsuit, as well as we have filed in First Circuit Court in Maine. We fought different things on dragging bills. We've fought industrial aquaculture issues. We have been a part of dredging for water quality issues. We comment on NOAA issues. Any of the public hearings, we also participate in those as well. So if it has to do with lobstering, we generally have a comment in.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Representative Hepler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Janie, for being here. One of the things that had come up in terms, you're talking about, instead of the tag fees, use the general fund. What are your thoughts about flipping that, and instead of taking the money from the tag fees, use the general fund? I think, or the surplus.
I guess if it wants to come out of the general fund, that's fine. I think that it is a good feeling for the fishermen to be able to have a portion of what they're paying go towards something that they're actively trying to fight and being a participant to those lawsuits. So I think this is something that they stand behind, because they're paying more for their tags every year. And not every year, but as fees increase, they pay more money for their tags. And this gives them a sense of knowing what this is going for, and they're getting behind that cause.
Thank you. Ms. Olson, I don't see any other questions. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Just a reminder, unless I'm incorrect, is that this money could be used for anything. I believe Representative Fockingham, you were saying it was to offset new ropes. Well, now we've been talking about a legal defense. How does it divide between these, or am I mixing up something?
Yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with ropes. This is only for legal fees. And it
Okay.
says in the bill that it's only for legal fees involving the lobster industry.
Thank you.
I had my
You had
hand
a question?
up, but you asked a question for me,
Yep.
so I still have
Yeah,
my
that's
hand.
fine.
Am I good to go?
You are. Thank you.
Okay. So the issue has been raised by the commissioner and some others, and it's in my bill, so it's my job to defend it. And I think there is a false equivalency happening where the commissioners raised the issue that if this bill passes, it will cut X amount of wardens and X amount of staff. And the alternative to that seems to be a suggestion from people that maybe we should go to the general fund to fund this bill. Well, my assertion is that these fees are from the industry. They're collected specifically from the industry, and that they should be designated. That's why those fees should be designated to the legal fund. I said in my public testimony, and I'll say now, that I support the department raising money from the general fund, and nobody has suggested that. Everybody is suggesting that this bill needs to go and ask the general fund for money. But what I'm saying is that it's the commissioner's department, and the commissioner should be getting money to fund his department from the general fund. And if this bill gets a fiscal note, or a fiscal note of any size, but a fiscal note of that size, then it's really in danger of not passing. And this bill does not need to get funding that way. That's why this bill gets the funding the way that it does. And what I'm saying is to take these fees that come from the industry and give them to the industry. And I will go to bat for the commissioner, and we're going to be taking up the budget next week, I think. And I will go to bat for the department to get more funding from the general fund. And that's where the money should come from, is the general fund, because the lobster industry pumps a lot of money into the state of Maine, a lot of money, over $1 billion in economic impact. So it's the general fund that should be funding the Department of Marine Resources. And keep in mind that the fishing industry is only one industry out of many things that the department addresses with its marine wardens and stuff. So I really have a hard time buying it that this funding is gonna, cut X amount of Marine Patrol or X amount of staff. That's not the case. It's all one big budget that needs to be funded somehow, and this is just one of those revenue sources. And I will go to bat. I hope the rest of you will join me in getting that money from the general fund to fund the department. But this bill needs to be maintained the way that it is.
Thank you. Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm always happy to fund DMR if you have some ideas to give them more funding. But specific to this bill, I think that the use of the funds is too broad, that the administrative costs are unnecessary when fishermen can contribute directly to a number of legal funds. I don't agree with surcharges on Class 1 licenses. We can set the trap tag debate aside. I hope that we can fund more positions through DMR. Also, AG's opinion and the constitutional challenges. I would like to move my question, which was the motion that I made last week, ought not to pass.
Okay, and good. Who was the second on that motion before? Representative McCray was. Okay, so we're just moving the motion that was already made after a good discussion. And we have a couple more hands just to clear things up. Representative Hutchins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the things I do outside of the legislature is moderate town meetings. I've done 200 of them over the years. And one thing I try diligently not to do is to allow a negative motion because it confuses people. And to do that, sometimes you have to ask a person to remove a negative motion because voting, this is a yes to do something. And it confuses people. So, like I say, I always try to discourage the use of a negative motion. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Representative Hepler.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. I hate to keep coming back to this, but I'm still kind of confused. And maybe I've just missed the context. And I think this is a question to Representative Buckingham about the Class 1 licenses. If they are least affected, why would we be asking them to help pay for this?
Who was that question for? Sorry.
I
Anybody?
think Representative Buckingham or anyone.
Could you repeat that, Representative?
Sure. If I'm going back to the Class 1 license surcharge, and I probably missed the explanation from a week ago, but if they are the least affected by potential lobster rules and whatnot, why was there a decision made to include them in the funding part?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I have a pretty good answer. The Class 1 license surcharge is the lowest, and it will remain the lowest. It will still be lower than Class 2 and 3, but right now they're basically Class 1 licenses aren't really paying their fair share. It's a much lower amount, and the Class 1 licenses is where you're seeing your most the majority of your latency. So there's a lot of people that are holding licenses and aren't pitching in to the to the industry as far as the surcharge goes. So it's just a simple matter of equity on that, and there's still that surcharge still remains lower than Class 2 and 3.
Okay, so you answered her question. Your hand was up. Did you have a question, Representative Buckingham? Okay, Representative McDonald.
I just want to raise the point that that's not the definition of equity. Equity would be if you spread it evenly among every license class. This is a different fund than the marketing collaborative, which is the current existing surcharge.
Okay, is that cleared up, Representative Hepler? Okay. Representative Bloom.
Thank you. I want to ask a question of Patrick Kelleher, please. I'm not inclined to support this at all because I feel like the lobster industry is supported by this state 100% all the time. And I wanted to know, I mean, the best evidence of that is what we're doing right now in terms of how we're defending the lobster industry and what resources the state of Maine is putting towards it. Can you tell me exactly how much the state of Maine is putting towards defending the lobster industry right now?
Go ahead, Commissioner. If you got an answer.
So strictly, thank you, Representative Bloom. So strictly from the legal fee sense, we've spent, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think we've spent over $350,000 to date, with likely another $600,000 to be spent. And we are doing that with some internal funds to the agency, money that has been directed to us from the governor's contingency fund, as well as what you will see as a request from the department or from the governor's supplemental budget request for an additional $980,000, which may actually have to increase based on some additional conversations we've had with our attorneys. So I may have additional information on that when I present the budget next Tuesday. That, of course, does not include any of the staff time that we're putting into this. It is the thing that is taking up the majority of our time, my time, the deputy commissioner's time, the director of external affairs, Megan Ware, as well as countless other scientists that are on staff who are working on the issues surrounding the whale lawsuits. So I don't know what that dollar value is, but it's significant.
As a follow-up, have you been denied any money? Has anyone said this is enough, we can't do anymore?
We have not been denied any money yet. If we were denied our request for general fund allocations for this year, it would impact our ability to continue with at least one of the lawsuits that we're engaged in right now. But you know, I'm going based on the fact, with conversations with leadership and this committee in the past, that there will be support for additional legal resources for the department.
Thank you. So I see no reason for another fund if we're giving everything that's necessary to fight this right now.
Yeah, and I would just, if I may, Mr. Chairman, just, you know,
Yes.
from a practical standpoint, you know, I do appreciate Representative Falkingham's approach here in trying to gain additional dollars for both the MLA and the MLU for the work that they're doing. I came from a nonprofit background where I had to raise money. I feel for the fact that they have to raise this money from the industry and from outside parties. It's a lot of work, but I honestly think it's better work than what we have in front of us here today to vote on. The bill itself is to reimburse for legal fees. We don't even know what that is in the future, right? The reimbursement of fees. What is it? Are we going to reimburse fees for a bill for a lawsuit that at face value seems to have very good reasoning behind it, but loses, and they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to lose, right? I mean, just weighing that gives me a little bit of pause to understand, okay, we have no control of what they're going to be using the money for. It's a reimbursement, right? That alone concerns me, right? You've heard from AAG Randlett on the constitutional issues, but not understanding what the money will be used for and having a say in that is also problematic. And I think, you know, many members of the industry may say, listen, I don't want my money to be used for that. It doesn't impact me. And those are the points that were being made earlier. The focus that DMR and the Mills administration have with the legal fees that we are expending with outside counsel are to benefit the entire industry as a whole. That's what those two groups are doing now, but how that changes in the future, I'm not sure. I'm not even so sure that the money couldn't be used to sue the department the way this is drafted. So that obviously gives me a little bit of pause. So I just don't, I think it's the wrong tool. I'm not doubting the need. I want to make sure that is clear. I'm not doubting the need here, but the use of this process is concerning. I think if it was for a general fund ask, I think that's even more problematic, that you're spending general fund dollars, not industry dollars. I think that even becomes more problematic. And then beyond that, I mean, listen, I've been in front of the legislature dealing with appropriations issues for a long time. We, with the help of this committee, have moved the needle a tremendous amount with general fund allocations for the Department of Marine Resources. Is it enough? It's probably never enough, right? I mean, we could always use some more stability, but that stability doesn't necessarily exist just because it's general fund allocation. I don't think there's a person on this screen right now that I'm looking at that doesn't think we will see we're riding a big fiscal wave right now, that doesn't think that we're going to see a change in the future of what that looks like, right? I think that's even expressed in the governor's approach with her supplemental, right? That's why there's such a big payback to the individuals. And maybe the individuals could use that $500 check if it passes to donate that to the legal defense fund of MLU or the MLA. But I think the need is there for the legal defense. It's just the ends to the means that we continue to oppose.
Thank you. Representative Buckingham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I can, I'd like to ask the commissioner one question, and then when he's done, I'd like to just wrap up what I've got to say. Is that okay?
Okay, yep.
So, Commissioner, we were just discussing a little bit ago about the funding and how that this part that takes from the trap tags is going to take some of your funding away. And you stated that it was so many Marine Patrol positions and a science position, something like that. What stops you, if anything, from increasing trap tags if you need additional revenue? I know it just happened recently. Can you increase trap tags if you need more revenue?
Here is LD 1945.
Let's see.
Sorry about that. My limit for the day has been reached of talking through my mute button. Yeah, Representative Fockingham, the commissioner has the authority to raise trap tag fees as it pertains to the lobster management fund and for uses to cover the cost of uses within the lobster management fund.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. So just for the committee on that, if the commissioner loses the revenue he needs to fund those positions that were mentioned before, the commissioner has at his disposal a way to recover those funds. And it was just asked a question a minute ago about the state giving everything. What's the state not giving? The state is doing a tremendous job right now in this moment. I'm very feel fortunate and thankful that they're doing that. But the state, when the MLA filed intervenor in this case in 2018, we asked the state to do that, and the state didn't even do that for 3 years. So the state does not always act quickly enough or meet the needs of the industry all the time. And the last thing I wanted to address about today's work session was the fact that the Attorney General didn't bring anything to the table today with the First Amendment issue, because the part that he spoke about is actually a thing in the bill that we're already going after. The surcharge that lobstermen already pay that goes to the collaborative would fall under the exact same type of challenge that he mentioned. So there's no difference there as far as a First Amendment issue. So nothing was brought to the table on that. And just lastly, and hopefully I'll be done after this, the whole industry broadly supports this. We have all the organizations supporting this bill. And if you go talk to fishermen, the vast majority, you might find 1 in 100 that oppose this, but 99 out of 100 support this. They know how important it is. Even the class 1 guys, even the inshore guys, even the people that aren't using their licenses support fighting for the industry. And we are desperate to get this passed. We need this source of reliable funding. We need it, and we need it now.
Okay, Representative Thorne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think this is a question for Representative Fockingham, in the sense that I'm trying to understand, was there a 9-member council proposed to go along with this?
Yes, that's right, Representative Thorne. 9-member council, 6 currently licensed fishermen, and 3 currently licensed dealers. Actually, correction, it's a 10-person council. It's going to be chaired by the commissioner or the commissioner's designee in a non-voting capacity.
And what would the purpose of this council be? To establish guidelines, to establish limits, to establish when and when not these funds would be used? Am I correct in assuming that?
Yeah, so the council is there to approve or reject requests for funding. 1/3 of the fund is designated specifically for the Maine Lobstermen's Association legal fight. 1/3 of the money is specifically designated for the MLU's legal fight, and 1/3 of the money is for the discretion of the committee, but that the fund shall be used to reimburse the department for any costs incurred. So the department will not have to pay any money out of its own budget to fund this. This will be completely self-funding, and that other third of the money will be used partially for that, which, as I understand from the commissioner, would be a very small administrative cost because this is essentially a pass-through. If you want to compare it to something that the department already does, that is the Lobster Collaborative, where the department is a pass-through, about $2 million. So this is an amount that is half the size of what they already do for the collaborative, and the department assumes no fiscal cost for the work that they do for the collaborative. So I would assume that the department would probably have no fiscal cost or a very small administrative fee to administer these funds.
And one last follow-up, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
So I'm getting that this is a proactive fund, and you sense the need for it. And what about does this carry over? Does the balance carry over if you don't need the funds from year to year? Does it continue to grow, or if those funds aren't needed, would they go back to the department at some point, or a portion of them?
Yes, that's right, Representative. The funds roll over from year to year, remaining in the fund, and until the expiration of the commission. At that point, the funds will be divided 50-50 back to the Lobster Management Fund and the Lobster Collaborative. If one or the other of those funds doesn't exist at that time, then 100% of the money will go to the one that does exist. If neither one of those funds exists at that time, then 100% of the money will go specifically to the department.
Sounds like a wonderful program. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative McCray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we're beating this to death, I am not so quick to discount legal advice as to say that the constitutional questions haven't been answered. We don't have the answers. We don't know what would happen, but we're getting advice that there are constitutional questions. I take that seriously. I also take seriously that the department, like any organization, has to use a legal strategy, and when to be an intervener. I don't have the ability to say when that should be. I trust that those minds are working on it with all the advice we have through the AG's office and others. I'm very appreciative of the union and MLA for having legal defense funds that people can contribute to, have contributed to, should contribute to. But I'm very concerned about what this bill allows in terms of the commission, what might be taken up around the whale rules. Of course, we all know we need to. I shouldn't say of course, we all know. I think we do need to fight, and we have been fighting. Our federal delegation, our executive branch, the legislature has been fighting to address the NOAA rules that have such a potentially devastating impact. However, this, the way this is designed, I'm very concerned about and can't support. I do appreciate the effort and the intent, but I don't think this is the way to do it, and I cannot support it.
Thank you, Representative McDonald.
Thank you. So Representative McCray just raised a good point about legal strategy. You're now creating a transparent government public process, so that is going to impact any legal strategy. I do not understand why we would create a pass-through when there is already a direct mechanism for the industry to contribute to legal defense. This is a lot of more government for reasons that I can't fathom why we would do this. Frankly, I know the original intent of the bill was to redirect funds that are going to the marketing collaborative. That did not have support. So now we've developed a different surcharge system, but it's unnecessary. I can just write a check, as I have been, to the MLA Legal Defense Fund without processing it through the government. This bill is unnecessary.
Thank you. And Representative Hepler.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm sorry, this is now my historian hat coming on here. Has there been, and I apologize if this was discussed earlier, is there a model for this kind of commission supporting an industry that is a big part of Maine's economy that is made up of in the same way that this is, or a similar way? Thanks.
Commissioner, were you going to answer that, or you had something else?
I was going to bring up another point just for clarification. I can say that on that, I'm unaware from the research that I've done if there's any public instrumentality that has been put together as a legal defense fund.
Okay, and anybody else want to answer her question about that before I let the commissioner talk?
I would.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I don't know if the question was specific to legal defense, but I think this is very similar and very, and it also goes to the comments that were just made by Representative McDonald. But I remember 2012 very well, and I remember the low prices of the lobster, and I remember when this commissioner, probably a newer commissioner with that not quite so much salt on him, was going around. He might remember one specific meeting at Goldsboro Rec Center where there were probably 100+ fishermen in attendance, and he asked if anybody opposed creating a surcharge for marketing. And I had purposely stood near the front of the room, and I stood up and raised my hand, and I think I was probably the only person in the room to do it. But back then, the commissioner and the department was very supportive of implementing a surcharge on fishermen that was overseen, much like Representative McDonald said that she couldn't believe taking a surcharge and all this. Well, we've done that already, and that's exactly the question that Representative Hepler asked. Is there precedent for this? And yes, there is precedent for this. We stepped up in 2012, and it was a need of the industry. And the need at that time was marketing. And we said, we need a marketing collaborative, not me, but other people. And they got their way. And turns out, we're getting $7 a pound. So maybe they were right and I was wrong. But we stepped up and we implemented something where we all pitched in through a surcharge for the benefit of the industry. And that's it. I mean, this is almost exactly a carbon copy of that same type of thing where we're very, very highly supported by the industry. Everybody in the industry that you go out and ask is very supportive of this idea. So that's what I would say to that question.
Thank you, Representative. And the only thing the only way it doesn't seem to be the same is that issue was brought up and a fund was established for the resolution, or at least the trying to address that problem. This takes money from what was designated to address that problem and diverts it. That's the only thing I'm hearing. When you say it's the same thing, doesn't it sound like it's a little different there?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll admit it's a little different, but it's very similar in the fact that there was a problem then in the industry, wanted it addressed and implemented it through a surcharge. And this is the same issue. We have a problem. We have a legal fight that needs to be fought. We need a source of reliable funds to fund these. And the whole fundraising, the private fundraising efforts are not reliable. And I fear that at some point we're going to run out of those funds. And when we do, we're going to be in a mess. going to be in a serious mess when Patrice gets to the end of her phone call list and the MLU gets to the end of their donor call list, and there's no one else to call. And their funds are sitting with $0 in them. This is a source of reliable funds that we can count on annually for the next 10 years to fund these. And if we don't implement it, I think the industry is in a lot of trouble, and we shouldn't have to depend on coming back to the legislature and begging money from the general fund or hoping that the Attorney General's office fights hard enough for us. We have the will and the means to fight for ourselves, and all we're asking is for some of our own money to be designated for that fight.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Two points that I agree with the representative on. One is we do charge surcharges for many different reasons. Research is one major reason. The other point that I would agree with him on is the amount of gray that I have in my hair now. And it's growing by the minute. And I have to clarify one thing though. The representative said earlier that that the state acts slow. We didn't engage in 2018 when this came up. I just want to point out that when this came up under a prior administration, we looked at actually intervening, and all the legal advice at the time was not to intervene. At that time, things have changed dramatically, right? From where we were at the original conversation to where we are now, things have definitely amped up. And that's why we have intervened in 2 cases and why we have also hired outside counsel. It's imperative on the state to receive the funds that we have to fight on behalf of the industry as we are right now. I think that is crucial. But I didn't want to leave this committee thinking that we haven't done anything to date. We did file an amicus brief with the case that is ongoing that has been extended by the courts, the CBD case that we're an intervener in now. That amicus brief was heavily referenced by the judge in the decisions that he made that benefited the industry moving forward. So I didn't want to leave this committee thinking that we're just now jumping into the fray. We've been engaged from that legal standpoint using our attorneys at the AG's office. They are now not involved in our legal strategy other than approving us hiring outside counsel. Now it is imperative that we maintain a high level of funding so we can use our outside counsel to do the legal work on behalf of the industry.
Thank you. You got something new, Representative Fockingham? No. Okay. Representative McDonald?
Thank you, Chair. So I just want to clarify my comments for the representative from Winter Harbor in that this is very different than the marketing collaborative. When we realized that we had a need for marketing, I could not write a check to Weber Chandwick. The marketing surcharge was to create the Maine Lobster Marketing Collaborative and then to fund it. There was not a direct mechanism for fishermen to contribute those funds directly. This bill, while I appreciate that we have a legal fight and that it needs to be funded, creates an unnecessary additional level of government where some of the money that we contribute goes to administrative costs instead of directly to the legal fund. We already have a robust mechanism to contribute to legal defense from the industry, which the industry strongly supports and is contributing to. These are not the same issues. Thank you.
Representative Hepler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify, I wasn't necessarily asking about the history of surcharges, but the history of commissions that are made up similar to this.
Okay, that's different. If anybody has an answer, Representative McDonald.
There is not a precedent. There is not another commission like this within the state of Maine. And I don't believe historically there has been.
Okay, well, we've certainly talked about all the issues there. Does anybody need a caucus? Well, let's have a caucus, but first of all, let's have, actually that'll allow staff. I'm going to say, a 10-minute caucus, regardless if we take 2 minutes. We'll come back at 11:45 so that staff can move their legs. I'm sorry, I always think this is going to end quickly and don't remember to give you a chance because our meetings aren't like VLA or something, but take a few minutes. while we-
Senator.
Or not. Yes, Representative Fockingham.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to the Representative Hepler's question. I think in all fairness, Representative McDonald's answers should probably have had a caveat to her knowledge. And I don't think probably any of us on this committee, have knowledge of that unless we looked in the archives, if there's anything, of that nature.
I am going to assume that if it
Representative
existed.
McDonald. Go
Thank you,
ahead.
Chair. I'm going to assume if it existed, that the Maine AG's office would have discovered that and included that in their note.
Okay. All right, we'll go with the 11:45 return. And Representative McCray, could you send out our caucus link, please? Thank you. See you in a few minutes. Oh, and if you're still here, since we're going out to separate links, you can just put your camera and mic on mute while we're gone.
What the fuck, you guys? Oh, sorry, I'm live. Great.
using that. I'll do my best at explaining it. So
Senator Rosen, you don't have a mascot today.
He's laying on the floor today.
Oh, geez, that's hard work.
I know, he's got his little bed on the floor. He's not with me. Oh, here he comes. Here he comes. Hi, George.
Oh, there he is. Look at that.
Yeah, they're saying hi to you.
Representative Hutchins, I think that's a committee mascot, don't you?
I do. He likes me when I stop into their house. Occasionally, I'm in Bucksport and I'll stop in and he comes running. Well, he doesn't actually run to me because he's a little large for that, but he always comes at a great time.
He gets to you one way or another.
Yes, he does.
Hello again. Everybody's coming back. They'll be right back. I have two computers, so I just left mine on in here, but a lot of folks are going between computers, so give them a minute.
And I would just like to say that I swore on a hot mic while trying to go in between
I
meetings,
always
so
think
my
it's going to be easier to
apologies.
get into chat rooms and out. It was when we
Remem-
could just shift without leaving. Much
My
easier
apologies.
to do.
Sorry, my apologies to members of the
AIO
public.
said that there's only one
I
mode
got
in this
that,
meeting
Representative
that will
McDonald.
allow that, which we use over in labor, but no other committee uses that mode. It worked good in labor. I don't know why we don't use it in other committees, but you know what? We've got like a couple of meetings left of Marine and we're done, so I don't care enough to figure it out. All right, we'll give Representative Alley just a couple more minutes. He's got a good IT team there in Hazel, but still it takes him a minute.
Oh, there.
Really, it's amazing. Yeah, we had one a couple of years ago, and the tour, and I wasn't sure where it was. And yeah, so it was something.
Representative McCray, anything from Representative Alley that I'm not seeing? Oh, I see. Okay. Thank you. Probably let Mr. Randlet go. Lunchtime. We've talked that part of it to death too. If you want to leave, Mr. Randlet, thanks for being here. All right, here he comes. Hey, Representative Valley, welcome back.
Yes, sir.
Cool. All right. Linda, you ready for a vote? Let's explain it clearly. Just we're doing the, we're doing the issues like with the referendum sometimes. Okay. The motion is ought not to pass. And a yes vote will be ought not to pass. For LD 1916, an act to create a legal defense fund for the Maine lobster industry. And go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, there's some background noise that could be distracting. All right, Senator Miramont, how do you vote?
Am I
Senator
missing
Miramont?
something? Okay.
Senator, can you hear me?
You're muffled, Linda.
Okay, now I can hear people I bet.
Okay, is that
Yeah, there's
better?
little issue there. Good. Have you heard
Okay.
anything I've said?
Yes.
Wow, amazing. Okay,
Can you hear me?
I can now. I can hear
Okay.
everything.
Okay, good. We're all together now. All right, I'll start with you, Senator Miramont, your vote.
Yes.
Representative McCray,
Yes.
Senator Maxman,
Yes.
Senator Rosen,
No.
Representative Alley,
Yes.
Representative Falkingham, Representative Falkingham,
LD
I
45.
cannot
I'm
hear you,
Lisa
sir.
Fitzgerald, Deputy Director of the Electronic Privacy Information Center, or EPIC. For over 25 years,
Ow.
leading advocate
Thank
for
you.
privacy, long advocated for the use of biometric data.
I'm sorry, who has the background noise?
45
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Representative Bloom,
Yes.
Representative Hapler,
Yes.
okay. Representative McDonald,
Yes.
Representative Crafts,
Yes.
Representative Hutchins,
No.
Representative Stanley,
No.
and Representative Thorne.
Nay.
That's 8 in favor, 5 opposed, ought not to pass as amended. I mean, sorry, ought not to pass.
Okay, 8 having voted in favor. 5 against the motion ought not to pass. Succeeds. And Representative Falkingham.
I'd like to change my vote.
We're still open. Linda, can you record that?
I'd like to change my vote to a yes.
Okay.
That makes it 9 in favor, 4 opposed.
9 in favor and 4 opposed. The motion passes. Okay, so that takes care of work session on LD 1916. And
Senator,
yes,
I'm interested in what the minority report would be on that bill.
I think Representative Falkingham, nope, he's not with us he's with the other side now.
Believe it was
So
an ought
who
to
would-
pass as amended.
Okay, from Representative Thorne. Great.
If I may, Senator, is the minority report interested in addressing any of the legal concerns that were raised by changing any of the language in the amendment?
I was under the understanding that that was a hypothetical. So at this point, no.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so that does close the work session on 1916, and that finishes our business. In fact, all of our bills. We now have some language reviews to go over. And we'll turn that over to Lynn.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair. So I am going to start with language review of 1844, which you just voted this morning in favor of Representative McCrite's amendment. And I had already drafted it, so let me screen share it for you. There we go. Are you seeing? Oh, that's not the right one. Well, how about we do a language review for what I have on the screen, which is LD 1898. Is that all right with you all?
Yes.
This is the majority report of an act to address the economic impact of federal closures on Maine's fixed gear fishing industry. And I was going to just confirm the vote with you all, which was 10 in favor, 2 opposed, and 1 absent. So this is the bill that allocates $30 million to the Atlantic Large Whale Take Reduction Plan Impact Fund. This was Representative Stover's bill. And during the work session, you all agreed on some eligibility criteria, which are highlighted in orange. The eligibility.
Lynn, you're not screen sharing, or at least not to me.
Okay. Well, let me try something different. Do you see something now?
Yes, that worked.
Okay, so this is LD 1898. You agreed to the following eligibility criteria. To receive funds, an individual must be a Maine resident, must hold a class 1, 2, or 3 lobster and crab fishing license, and must have purchased 400 lobster trap tags during 2 of the past 3 calendar years. If you fall into that category, then you will receive funds distributed by the department in accordance with this section 5 fund distribution. Department will determine the base amount, and any eligible individual who has an annual landed value during 2 of the past 3 calendar years of between 10,000 and 25,000 gets the base amount. Eligible individuals with an annual landed value of 25,000 or more during 2 of the past 3 years gets twice the base amount. And if you exceed 25,000 and have a multi-species, have both a state and federal lobster permit, you get 3 times the base amount. And I believe that was all of the changes. This is all moved into unallocated language. I don't know if you remember during the discussion, because this is a one-time funding mechanism, it is appropriate to go into unallocated language and not to create a statutory section. So that is the amendment as the committee voted, and unless it looks incorrect, I can now try and share the next one. Okay, hearing nothing, I'm going to assume that you all are in favor of that. And let's see if okay, now I'm going to show you LD 1844, which you did just discuss this morning. And this completely replaces 1844. And this is an act to amend provisions in the laws governing aquaculture leases. It has 3 provisions. 1, allowing the department to obtain an emergency lease. 1, to define what suspended culture means, and 1 provision to allow the department to issue a land-based aquaculture lease for, license for longer than 1 calendar year. And as I said, that was just this morning. And the last one is LD 1770, which is an act to create a commercial halibut fishing license. And let me just make sure I get the votes on that were 12 in favor and 1 absent. Let me share this screen with you. So the amendments as requested and agreed to separates out commercial halibut fishing license for operators who also have a federal Northeast multi-species permit authorizing halibut fishing. So it specifies that those individuals must get a state license. That's the first section. The second section specifies that crew members aboard a boat that has a license also may take fish or take, possess, ship, and sell as long as the license provides for crew members. The next section again adds these licensed operators with the federal Northeast multi-species permit. Section 5 is amended. That's the halibut tags. It states that the commissioner, the department may have 2 different options. And the options that were in this bill are 10 tags for $10 or 25 tags for $100. And I believe that is all of those amendments. And again, as long as these reflect, I see a hand up from Representative McCreight, so I'm thinking maybe it doesn't reflect the committee's intentions.
Okay, Representative McCreight.
No, I don't have that problem, but the commissioner and Deirdre is back. We had wanted to make sure they had a question, I think, about one of the bills. Deirdre, is that right?
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Senator Merrimont. I did want to get just a little bit of clarification on LD 1898 Stover's bill. We attempted to run that analysis based on the language you provided, and the staff who were doing that, you know, the devil is kind of in the details. So we had to make some decisions, and I just wanted to make sure that what we did where there was any ambiguity is what was intended. So if we could just quickly touch on that before you conclude, that would be helpful.
And Representative Fockingham, you have something to
I also had a comment on 1898, and it was the part where eligibility criteria, and it says in part 3, have purchased 400 lobster tags in 2 of the past 3 years. I think that needs to say 400 or more lobster tags.
Good. Okay. Lynn, whenever you're ready.
I got that. So I'm not sure, Deirdre, do you need me to put back up the language for 1898? Would that help the discussion?
Well, I can just go off of my screen and what the questions that came up again. I just, it's more just trying to get confirmation that this is, our interpretation of this language is correct.
Okay, so the way it's drafted is there are 3 tiers of funding, and the department determines the base amount. And I just wrote it as the base amount as determined by the department to allow for, I think what you're talking about, which is it may be a bit of a complicated calculation. And I did not want to tie the department's hands by any language. So this language permits the department to determine the base amount and then to distribute the base amount to those people who make land under 25,000, twice the amount for 25,000, and 3 times the amount for 25,000 plus the having both the state and federal lobster permit.
Right, so if I could ask my questions or just say kind of how we would do that and just make sure nobody has any objections to that. So the first thing is obviously, so because we are looking at 2 of 3 years, we are saying that you have to have, in order to qualify for 2 times the base amount, you would have had to have made over 25,000 in 2 of those 3 years. It's not an average of those years. Is that correct? What people were looking for, you have to have made, just making over 25,000 in 1 of 3 years isn't going to get you into that tier. You have to have made over 25,000 in 2 of those 2 years, correct? The other thing is obviously people's license history is different. So we are looking only at people who held class 1, 2, or 3 licenses in each of those 3 years. So if you were a student and then you upgraded, say you were a student for 2 years and then you upgraded to a class 1, you would not be eligible for these funds unless you tell me otherwise. We are looking for people who had those class 1, 2, or 3 licenses in all 3 of those years. And then the final thing is people, oh, sorry, there are two things. One is that people give up and get federal permits also. So we would only give that 3 times the base amount to somebody who held a federal permit in that final year. Like you'd have to be currently a federal permit holder in order to get the 3 times the base amount. Holding it 3 years ago isn't going to help you. And it looks like Representative Fockingham is nodding to that. The final just clarification, and potentially it doesn't need to be in the language, but I just want to make sure folks understand this. So in order to make these determinations, we are using the dealer data because harvesters currently only report at 10%. So it's not impossible that a dealer has made an error in their reports and failed to report somebody's landings or reported somebody's landings in someone else's name. So the department would intend to provide for an appeals process in the event that a harvester felt like they were incorrectly, they were put into the wrong tier and they have information that would support them being put into a different tier. We would want to make sure that we could accommodate that information. And as long as all of that sounds correct, we just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page with those things.
All right. Lynn, you want to clarify anything before I go to Representative Fockingham?
I was just going to say that based on those, if you're all in agreement, I would tweak the language a bit to make sure it's clear. I'm happy to bring back again if that's your preference, but a few tweaks would make it absolutely crystal clear.
That would be good. And since we are coming back next week, we still have 1989 to go over next week, plus budget if we have information. That would be good on those. Representative Fockingham.
I think Deirdre was pretty correct on all the things that she said there, and I think that it was a good point that she brought up about the federal permit too, that does need to be a current permit holder, and we didn't that question hadn't come up, so that was a good pickup, and I think it does need to be added in there that only current federal permit to be able to qualify for that 3rd tier.
Good. Okay. Is that it, Lynn?
That is it for language review. I was going to share some information about budget calendaring if you would would like that.
Please.
So the AFA schedule is out, and the joint hearing with Marine is scheduled for Tuesday, March 8th at 1 p.m. I will send you out an email with the budget pages again. I sent them out once, but I'll send them again. So that's on the 8th at 1. The report back, meaning you have to vote and I have to submit materials on your behalf is due the following Friday, March 18th. So you have 10 days between the hearing and when you need to have your submission back to AFA.
All right. Okay, so we didn't specifically have a meeting for March 8th anyway, so that's not a conflict. Are we going to be able to get a briefing on the
Yes.
1st?
Yes, so the commissioner did confirm that he can do a briefing next Tuesday. And you'll have two language reviews and a minority report review for next Tuesday, the 1st, starting at 9.
Okay. All right, so that takes care of business and schedule. And Representative Buckingham, you have your hand up.
Sorry, I'm just bad at putting it down.
No. Okay. All right, if there's nobody else who wants to weigh in, I see no hands. We've wrapped up our business for today. And thank you very much for all your hard work and good input. And I'll see you next week if, or happen to run into you tomorrow. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great rest of your week.